This week in the video, we're going to talk about early childhood, which is the period from about 2.5 to 6 years old. Early childhood is a period of time that is exciting because children are rapidly developing their skills in many areas. Parents often observe this time as the period when their children go from being babies to little people who can move about competently on their own, communicate ideas and opinions, and think up and discover new things. Children in the early childhood period also develop a sense of themselves in a more robust way, and they have more of a sense of others and have many, many questions. To get started with this section, we will watch a little bit of this video of what a 3-year-old looks like. So this is towards the beginning of this period.
What's up, mamas?
That's awesome. Try it again. Say it one more time.
What's up, mamas?
So I'm here with Kai today, and we're going to be doing conversations with a 3-year-old. That way you guys know the developmental milestones for a 3-year-old's language skills. So, Kai, I have a couple questions for you, though. How old are you?
I'm like 3 in my birthday.
How many is that with your fingers?
3.
3? Like that? But how old are you right now?
Like the birthday in March.
2? Your birthday is in March. 2. Yeah, you're 2 right now. Can you check me out, Dr. Kai?
Yes.
Okay.
I like your body moon and my dog.
Thank you! What sound does a dog make?
Woof woof.
What sound does a goat make?
Meh.
What sound does a bird make?
Tweet tweet.
What sound does a cow make?
Moo.
What sound does a duck make?
Quack quack.
Can you tell me what animal makes this sound?
Yeah, like a pig.
A pig? Okay.
Yeah.
What animal makes this sound? Meow.
Yeah, like a kitty cat.
A kitty cat? Like Athena?
All right, so that gives you an idea of what a little 2.5 to 3-year-old child sounds like. The child in that video is just about to turn 3, so he's really at the beginning of this period, and you can hear some of what he's like. So now, let's look
What's up, mamas?
That's all.
at a video of about a 6-year-old. And this is just a silly video interviewing a 6-year-old about the world.
Today, my guest, Gabriella Stein. You are how old?
6 years old.
You like school. That's pretty sweet. That's like your job right now, is going to school.
Yep.
And you really like your job.
Yep.
What year is it right now?
I don't know the year yet, but I'm gonna.
You are how old?
6 years old.
You like school. That's pretty sweet. That's like your job right now, is going to school.
Yep.
And you really like your job.
Yep.
What year is it right now?
I don't know the year yet, but I'm gonna know soon the year.
Do you know what space is?
I don't go to space.
Is the sun a girl or boy?
A girl.
Is the moon a girl or boy?
A girl. God, lives up on top of a big cloud and watches over us. God bless America, my home, sweet home. If we do good, he smiles. If we do bad, he frowns like this.
What's jail like?
And when you do something really bad, like hit somebody's car and hit it 4 times,
What do you think it feels like to be old?
not good.
Well, I want to thank my guest, Gabriella Stein, for coming and talking to us today. Thank you so much. Gabriella.
So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what a 6-year-old is like and what the differences in those conversations are. So those are the sort of at the ends of our developmental trajectory. All right. So now let's talk about some of the different domains of development and what we see at this age. In terms of cognitive development, at the beginning of the stage, children can often get stuck in their focus on one part of a problem. And this gets in their way with problem solving. So examples of this include things like egocentric thinking, which means that they focus on themselves and have a hard time imagining other perspectives of the problem or other parts of the problem that they can't see or that aren't about them. Or centration, which is focus on one feature of a problem. So they might get really excited about how much something weighs and not be able to think about other things that are happening with it and really just keep thinking about how to solve the problem with how heavy the item is. So those are some examples of ways that children at the beginning of this stage can sort of just get stuck on something, and that makes it hard for them to problem solve. Children expand these abilities at uneven rates and in different areas throughout this period. So some children will develop more expansive skills in this area sooner, and some children will be stuck for a longer period of time. One special part of this area of development, this cognitive development area during this time, is called theory of mind, which involves understanding what other people know outside of what you know, which is something that we'll learn a lot more about in class. On the slide, you can see some basic things that we would expect from around a 2.5-year-old, things like understanding the concept of two. You saw that with the small child, Kai, who was able to show you 2 fingers or even 3. And some other things we would expect them to be able to do would be name some objects, which we saw, or sorts, shapes, and colors, play simple make-believe games and understand that they're playing make-believe, but they don't quite have this idea of theory of mind yet, that you might know something that I don't, or that you don't know something that I do. And then by the time the children are 6 and they're ending this early childhood period, they can count to 10 or more, can guess what will happen next in the book, and can know more about the world in terms of common objects like money and food, and can even play games and participate in those sorts of activities that involve understanding a more complicated concept, partly because they've developed theory of mind. They can understand what other people know, which is important in a game, right? Not showing your cards and that kind of thing. And also that they can understand what a false belief is, like that somebody might mistakenly think something. So they might think that you have a specific card, and it turns out that you don't, so you could trick somebody in a game. So those are some of the basic parts of cognitive development at this stage. In terms of language development, we saw a great example of this with that video of the 3-year-old. Children can understand in terms of receptive language. They can understand way more than they can express. And this can be seen in their ability to follow directions of increasing length and complexity. So like a 2.5, 3-year-old can follow a 2 or 3 step command, which might be something like, go in the room and get your shoes. It's a 2-step command, so they have to go into the room and get their shoes. And a 6-year-old can follow a way more complex command, something that involves multiple parts or has like an if-then statement in it, right? So go into your room and get your sandals. If you can't find them, get your sneakers. It's something that's more complicated. But often children can do those things or follow instructions using words that they can't say or expressing a concept that's more complicated than what they have said out loud. They can also use a skill that's really interesting called syntactic bootstrapping, which means that during this stage, children can they understand the basic constructs of the language they're learning, and they can figure out which one of those words is probably a noun, the same way that we do when we don't know which word is probably a noun, or we don't recognize the noun, which is just like where it is in the sentence. So sometimes children can figure out some of the meaning of a word based on what's around it. Cool. In terms of expressive language, children around 2.5, 3 years old, like the child we saw, have a 300-word vocabulary, and most of it's nouns. And this is the biggest change in this age range in some ways, is that between 2.5 and 6, children go from having a mostly noun vocabulary, right? He could tell you, that's a cow, that's a pig, that's a sheep, my birthday is in March, to having a vocabulary that has majority verbs and adjectives, or way more verbs and adjectives, so they actually can put sentences together that are more complex. So even though a 2.5-year-old we expect could have a conversation that's a couple sentences long back and forth, A 6-year-old can really express full ideas and has learned a lot more about how to describe things and to talk about what's happening, and they can tell simple stories. Physical development, around 2.5 years old. In terms of gross motor, children in this stage are slowing down from how much they could move around in terms of thinking about an infant going from completely unable to move to, in control of their capacities, but they're still developing a lot of big skills. Their ability to move and control their body with precision is hugely improved. This is the stage where children go from needing help and supervision when they're moving around to being fully capable bipeds, right? So coming into 2.5 years old, children can already, as we know, walk and run more smoothly, and can get around, but they have limited control. So they can walk and run more than in the infancy stage that we talked about, but they're still having some difficulties there. They can also climb stairs with alternating feet already around 2.5 years old, but by 6, we can actually see them do this very well. By 6 years old, you expect children to have what we think of as sort of like near adult abilities on these fronts. Certainly, they still have some challenges, but like they can play a game, run, catch a ball, ride a bike even without training wheels. These kids are capable physically. Same thing with fine motor skills. By 2.5, when they start out at 2.5, they can unzip big zippers, use a spoon, get themselves dressed and undressed. But by 6, they can really do pretty complex things. They can get dressed without help. They can use scissors. They can draw and write simple words. Think about being in kindergarten, right? They can actually do quite a bit. All right, and then in social and emotional development, when children start this stage, children are being socialized into their own cultural standards and values and knowledge. And at the same time, they're developing their own sense of themselves and their personalities. Children are developing their understandings of others, and with that, they expand their capacity for empathy and pro-social behavior. So those are big challenges and jobs during this early childhood period. It's figuring out my role in the world, other people's roles in the world, and an understanding of myself and others. Remember that we are learning about this idea of theory of mind during this period. So around 2.5, coming into this stage, children tend to copy a lot, especially adults and other children. They're sort of watching. It's a way of learning. We see some defiant behavior. You've heard about the terrible 2s. Or 3s or 4s, because they've learned words like no and have some more physical capabilities and independence, so they're more likely to test out those limits. They mainly play beside children rather than with them, so I might sit next to a child and play, but not really truly with them. But they're starting to include others and actually know how to play back and forth, and they can separate easily from their parents at this age, hopefully. That's something that we would expect. But by the time they're 6, they have peers that are friends in some way, and they want to please and be like friends. They're aware of gender and have developed the ideas of pro-social behavior and empathy, sad for somebody who's sad or helping somebody who dropped something. They started to understand that idea. And they get rules in different domains. What is a moral rule, a social rule? You saw this happening with the 6-year-old in the video where she was talking about why you might go to jail and also how God feels about things that you do that are good or bad, right? So they're understanding these more complex ideas and the ways that our society has built those understandings in whatever society and culture they're being raised in. And then their self-regulation skills are more advanced. You may or may not have noticed that in the 3-year-old video, there were lots of cuts in it, probably because the child is 3, right? Self-regulation is hard then, to 6, where that 6-year-old seems to have sat there for that whole section pretty independently, which would be appropriate for her skill level to be able to just sit for the interview. All right, and so that brings us to the end of this, where we're just going to start talking about the big questions. As you can see, this is a period of huge growth and development across all areas. There are many easily identifiable milestones to keep track of and to celebrate during this time, and that's something that parents and other people who work with children can be doing during early childhood. Children are developing increasing independence, but still need a lot of help and support from adults. Throughout this period, children are developing their capacity for interacting with and understanding others, and understanding themselves. Here are a few big questions for you to keep in mind during your reading and in class this week. So the first, how can parents and other adults engage children in early childhood in using their bargaining skills? So thinking about the skills we have, what could you be doing or what can other people be doing, or could you encourage parents, say, to do to be engaging these skills? What are the biological, psychological, and social factors that impact the new development of skills? How does the development of theory of mind impact children's social interactions? How would you assess children's theory of mind abilities in a clinical setting? And how would you keep them in mind if you were working with children in this age group? And as children are developing a sense of their personality and their culture, what dilemmas or challenges might they be facing, or what things might we see happening during this time? So those are some big questions to be thinking about as you get into the reading this week, and I hope that you enjoy learning more about early childhood.